Today, we are going to be talking about the latest news regarding Biden's immigration reform, a type of amnesty for many of you, and how it's going to impact you, the details that have been put forth so far. So you'll want to stay tuned because this could be life-changing for you. We have been waiting for this as immigration lawyers for many, many years. We're also going to discuss how this affects DACA holders as well. Department of Homeland Security estimates that 500,000, 500,000 people will be impacted by this. I just cannot tell you how grateful, how happy I am, because so many of you have suffered for so long. This has been long awaited to address the broken immigration system, and many US citizens have been deprived the right of family unity, of having their family member being in lawful status, and this is going to address that issue. Approximately 50,000 non-citizen children of the spouses are also estimated to be eligible to seek parole under the process. You might be wondering, when did this happen? Well, on June 18th, Biden announced this new policy.
Keeping couples together who are married, where one spouse is a U.S. citizen, the other is undocumented. They've been living in the United States for at least 10 years with this fear and uncertainty. We can fix that, and that's what I'm going to do today. Fix it.
Let's look at who qualifies for this program. Now, it's important to note that this is going to be decided on a case-by-case basis. So just because you apply doesn't mean that it's going to be granted. So you're going to want to put your best foot forward, put the best application forward. Also, is important to note is that you should be ready to apply. Talk to your immigration lawyer so you can start planning ahead. Although the details aren't out of what Department of Homeland Security specifically wants, we do have an idea of the basic requirements. So it's good to plan ahead so when the details do come out, you're ready to file right away, because we don't know how long this program will last if a different administration becomes the new administration. Let's talk about the details. You have to have been present in the United States without admission or parole. What this means is that you came in without a visa. For instance, you walked across the border. In that situation, that means you came in without a visa. So in that situation, be eligible. You've been continuously present in the United States for at least 10 years as of June 17th, 2024. If you've left and come back, we're going to need further guidance from the government on how that could affect your application. But my thought is, if you're gone for more than 90 days, that may hinder you being able to get this application, or it could be gray area. And we don't know the answer to that question because the government has not given us guidance on that yet. You have a legally valid marriage to a US citizen as of June 17th, 2024. This is important. You have to be married, and it has to be a valid marriage. So sometimes a lot of things that I see is if you are married and you didn't get a divorce from your prior spouse, you want to consult an attorney to determine whether or not you qualify, because that could be considered an invalid marriage. So a valid marriage is one of the foundations of these requirements. You also cannot have a disqualifying criminal history that could constitute a threat to national security or public safety, and you should otherwise be able to demonstrate that you merit a favorable exercise of discretion. And that's going to be important on how you submit your application to USCIS and whether or not you have a criminal history. If you have a criminal history, I think it's going to be very similar to DACA. That's my prediction. Details are not out yet. And it could be something of the nature where if you have a felony, you may not qualify, or a significant misdemeanor, you may not qualify. But if you have a misdemeanor, you could qualify. Now, this is all me predicting what the policy is specifically going to be, because they don't have the policy out right now. And this is just based off of my 22 years of experience of the different policies that have come out previously similar to this, such as DACA. You might be wondering, well, what about my child? What about children? Children of spouses who are granted parole under this process could also be considered for parole on a case-by-case basis under this process if you were physically present in the United States without admission or parole, and you have a qualifying stepchild relationship with the US citizen parent, as defined by the Immigration Nationality Act as of June 17th, 2024. So this is fantastic because this keeps the families together. So children are also possibly eligible as well. So I hope you're getting as excited as I am about this process. We will see the details when it comes out. Again, the details are not out. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, because you're going to want to make sure you get these updates as I continue to do videos as the details come out. And if you want to get an idea of other types of parole, types of relief out there, take a look at my parole in place video, and that will also give you an idea of how a parole benefit works. Also, you might be eligible for that form of relief as well. Now, how's USCIS going to determine if you're eligible? Well, you're going to need to submit a parole in place application to demonstrate eligibility and of course pay a fee to show that you meet the requirements. Also, USCIS is going to come out with further guidance to demonstrate that you meet the requirements. So one of the requirements is to show that you've been here for the last 10 years. So it could be something similar to 245I or DACA, where you have to show that you actually have been in the United States over those 10 years to demonstrate that you meet the requirements. And that's going to be important as well. That again is my prediction. Guidance has not come out yet, but that is what USCIS has done in other types of applications. They want to see proof that you actually resided. I keep on stating, well, the details haven't come out. So you might be wondering, when are the details coming? They said end of the summer. So I think it'll be around sometime in August, late August, and we'll continue to have videos and updates on this channel, so make sure that you are staying tuned. That's what we know right now. USCIS has also indicated that upon receipt of a properly filed parole in place request, they're going to determine on a case-by-case basis whether a grant of parole is warranted based on a significant public benefit or urgent humanitarian reasons, and whether or not the applicant merits a favorable exercise of discretion. It's unclear what this language means, if it means that they just want the specific documentation showing residency and fill out the application for this program, or if they're going to take one step further and rise it to the level of a I-601A waiver, where you have to demonstrate hardship or some type of humanitarian grounds. That will also be another thing that we're going to be looking at in the coming months. USCIS has also indicated that requests are going to take into consideration the potential applicant's previous immigration history, criminal history, the result of background checks, and national security and public safety vetting, and other relevant information. You might be wondering, why do we need this? Well, there are other forms of relief. For instance, the I-601A waiver if you entered without a visa, parole in place, if you have a family member who qualifies as a family member from the military under this program, and you may qualify, for instance, if it's a spouse who's a military member. But those programs, one, could be limited. Two, for the I-601A waiver, this is disappointing what the Biden administration has increased in time throughout this administration. It's over 3 years just for the 601A waiver, not to talk about the I-130 taking about 14 months, and not to talk about then the NVC process and the interview. We're talking about 5 years. And you have to go leave and go for an interview as well outside of the country. So this program allows spouses to stay in the United States. Now, while the I-601A waiver could allow you to get a green card in the future, it doesn't address the fact of, well, with these long processing times that have occurred during this administration, there's no opportunity to work. Well, this program allows you to apply for work authorization under Biden's new policy. So we have a broken immigration system, and I think this policy is doing a lot to address some of the brokenness in the system that has been present for decades. Our mission in our law firm is unification, and I want to share a story of a family that we helped through the I-601A waiver who could also be helped through this program. It exemplifies many of you who deserve this relief, deserve family unity. In this case, our client, we're going to call her Rosa, that we're protecting the names, of course, and identity. She'd been in the U.S. illegally since 1999. She had a U.S. child from a prior marriage. She was married to a U.S. citizen. We're going to call him Jeff. And prior to their relationship, our client's spouse was an alcoholic who was also addicted to gambling and abused illegal drugs. This was the U.S. citizen. Now, since their relationship, the client's spouse had cleaned up his act, kept a steady job, furthered his educations, and paid off his debts. Client's spouse also did not have any further arrests since the start of their relationship, and we argued in this situation the client's continued presence in the U.S. was necessary to the spouse's sobriety and associated good behavior, and we argued that the client's spouse couldn't live without our client in their home country because he cares for his elderly parents in the U.S. and could not further his career and education abroad. So this story symbolizes illustrates many of you where you're doing good. The family unity is making our country a better country. It's helping US citizens, it's helping our economy, and now this program will allow people to work a lot faster than they were able to before. All right, you are ready to move forward. Well, please keep in mind, nothing is out specific yet, so we can't file for an application, but let me tell you when this will start. USCIS will soon publish a Federal Register notice to implement the process. They're going to explain the application process, provide additional guidance on requirements to be considered for parole in place, and the notice is going to explain what forms to file, the associated filing fees, any required documentation and supporting evidence that will be needed to request parole in place. And as I mentioned earlier, this is supposed to come out in late summer. Now you might be wondering, well, what if I just submit my application now? What will happen? What will happen is your application will be rejected. So don't do that. Don't believe anyone who says that you can submit an application now, because there are no applications that you're able to submit. Another question you might have is, how long is the parole good for? And what do I do when this ends? Under this process, a qualifying individual could be granted parole on a case-by-case basis for up to 3 years. And the period also provides an opportunity for eligible spouses of US citizens granted parole to file Form 485. At the conclusion of the parole period, USCIS anticipates that you'll have a pending adjustment application, that's a green card application, or a final adjustment application that's completed. What can you do now to start getting ready for this process? You should wait for additional information to be issued, including the date on which the process begins, when applications are going to be accepted, and what forms to use to apply for parole. However, until then, there are some things that you can do right now to start preparing. You can have documentation to establish that you've been continuously present in the United States for at least 10 years of June 17, 2024. This is the applicant, the non-citizen. You can have evidence of a legally valid marriage to a US citizen as of June 17, 2024, and evidence of favorable discretionary factors that you would like USCIS to consider. Many applications, such as green card applications, also have a biometric requirement. That begs the question, will this have a biometrics requirement? Applicants are going to need to submit certain biographic and biometric information to USCIS for screening and vetting purposes. This goes back to the security requirement that I mentioned earlier, that you can't be a threat to national security and can have a certain type of criminal background, so that's why biometrics are a part of this process. What if you came in on a visa and you overstayed? Well, if you came in on a visa and overstayed, this process is not available to you. You may be able to apply for a green card if you're married to a US citizen in the United States. If you overstayed in this situation, consult with an immigration lawyer. This program is for people who entered without a visa. What about if you're in removal proceedings? Are you eligible to apply for this process? If you're in removal proceedings, you may be able to apply for parole in place under this process before USCIS if you qualify under this process. Now, USCIS is going to weigh on a case-by-case basis the existence and circumstances of the removal proceedings, as well as your positive equities, determining whether to grant parole in place. However, a non-citizen who is in removal proceedings because they're an enforcement priority under the guidelines for the enforcement of civil immigration law issued by Secretary Mayorkas in September 2021 will be disqualified from receiving a parole in place pursuant to the process. What if USCIS denies your application? Will you be put into removal proceedings? If USCIS denies a request for parole, they do have the discretion to issue what's called a notice to appear or refer a case to ICE for enforcement action. That's why it's really important to have a knowledgeable and experienced immigration lawyer prepare your immigration application. What about the fact if you have a criminal history, can you apply? All applicants will undergo national security and public safety vetting as part of the process, and those who pose a threat to national security or public safety will be disqualified from the process and, where appropriate, may be referred for law enforcement action. Non-citizens who pose a threat to national security or public safety will not be eligible for the process. You might be wondering, what are some types of criminal history that would disqualify you? This qualifying criminal history includes criminal convictions that are likely to make you ineligible for a green card, as well as convictions that don't render non-citizens statutorily ineligible for a green card. More guidance is going to be coming out on this specific factor, and it is really important to look at this guidance. You might be wondering about work authorization. If you're approved for parole, when can you apply for work authorization? Which is one of the big benefits of this program. An individual who's granted parole is also immediately eligible to apply for the EAD using the C11 category code, and more information is going to be coming soon about this as well. And how long will it take? That will be very important. I think that they're going to be issuing decisions quickly because of the elections that are coming up. It would make sense for the administration to issue decisions as fast as they can. However, I'm also concerned because humanitarian applications such as I-601As have slowed down during this administration. J-1 waiver applications have slowed down in this administration. And so I hope that the Biden administration does not make the same mistake and do that with this. I don't think that they will, and we will see what happens. To wrap up, we've discussed the details of Biden's new policy as they have been announced up to date. This is great news. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts on this announcement, and make sure you hit the like button if you liked this video, and subscribe to stay informed. By watching this video, you're bettering yourself. By bettering yourself, you're bettering your family. And by bettering your family, you're bettering the world. Thank you. Bye for now.